Blog Talk Radio.
Good morning, everyone. This is Laurie Smith, and this is One Child Abuse Survivor to Another Restoration. Glad to be here. It is January the 8th, Monday morning, 7:30 in the morning, Calgary, Alberta, 2018. And I'm glad to be here. Hopefully everything's going good with you and all of you out there. I took a month off just for a break, which is much needed, and just did the holiday thing with my husband and really had a good time. And I needed a rest, and it was a good time to drop off. And I wasn't aware of it. Otherwise, I would have let you know on the last show that I did. But I sort of just dropped off there. But I was kind of busy and overtired, so I just took a month off, and so a much needed break. So I'm glad to be back here this morning, and hoping that you're all okay. So this is just a really morning reflection for me, looking at positive reinforcement, self-care, coping mechanisms, things like that, sort of to help me on my healing journey. Hopefully it'll help you too, anybody who's listening. And you have to listen to this sort of thing at your own discretion. If you're a survivor of abuse, you want to make sure that you're safe enough, first of all, to be listening to this. I always say this on all my shows because this is really important, especially for people who are just starting out on your healing journey, and you're not sure, whether or not you're really going to be okay enough to listen to something like this, anything like this, my show or anybody else's shows like this. Dealing with abuse, especially child abuse and horrific stuff like that. So if you're not sure if you're safe enough, get that information by going to ASCA, Adult Survivors of Child Abuse and More Center program. And there you can get a Survivor to Thriver workbook. It's right online. You can just read it. You can download a copy. You can read it right on the website there. And read the Safety First chapter, the very first chapter, which is called Safety First, and it's like 60-something pages long. It's huge. And then there's also other places too, like Avoca has a Safety First section. So just get that information to know whether you're safe enough to be listening and won't hurt yourself or hurt somebody else, or just go backward in your healing journey, which you don't want. If you're not sure, then ultimately it's your decision. your choice to listen to certain things like this, which may trigger you. So you want to be really careful what you're doing and make the right decision on your behalf, right? Because only you can do that for yourself. So you need to be your own best advocate. And everybody else who's listening, make sure you're listening at your own discretion. I'm talking about abuse, a very sensitive topic and very disturbing for most people. So you have to make sure that so this is not going to bother you. If it is, just turn the show off. You're not going to be bothering me at all. And so we'll get right into this. So we left off finishing up a section looking at anxiety from HAVOCA. That's Help for Adult Victims of Child Abuse. HAVOCA, HAVOCA.org. And this morning we're going to pick up one of the last ones that they have there. We've covered most of their stuff that they have on their website. This section is dealing with grief, which is really disturbing for me. This is an area that I'm still have a lot of work to do in, grief work. So I've done a lot. I've already done a lot of work in it, but I know that I still have some to do. And so this is an interesting section for me to go through, and hopefully other people will get something out of it. It's from HAVOCA.org, HAVOCA, HAVOCA, Help for Adult Victims of Child Abuse.org. So we'll just look at a morning reflection. How are we doing on our healing journey? Any particular things we need to work on? How am I feeling? How are we feeling? We could ask ourselves these questions, right? And so I'm doing pretty good. I didn't do any work while I was off on my break there. I didn't do any work on my healing journey stuff at all. I just took a real break from everything and hung out with my husband and just enjoyed the holiday and relaxed and took it easy. And I did some work on studies and stuff, but it had nothing to do with my healing journey stuff. I didn't do any kind of inside work, so I really do need to get back on track and get back going again. The only thing I did do was attend some ASCA, Adult Survivors of Child Abuse, attended one of their group meetings, which was really helpful. That's one thing that I did do. But that's all. That's about it. Other than that, I run my own volunteer, lead support groups. So I've got 2 going right now. That's helpful. It's very, very helpful. But I still need to do the other work on the outside of that too. And so, I still have lots that I need to work on. I'm sure of it. I've come a long way, but I know there's more work to be done. So yeah, but that's sort of where I'm at this morning. I feel actually kind of refreshed really from taking that break. But these are things we can ask ourselves: how are we feeling? How are we doing? What do we need to work on? That way we can sort of head in a certain direction if we know that I'm dealing with anger, or I'm dealing with anxiety, or I'm dealing with boundary issues or containment issues or grief work or whatever it is, So these things are important. Otherwise, I'm feeling pretty good. And we'll pick up here with HAVOCA's grief information. I just read right from their website. I haven't read this already, so this is the first time I'm looking at it. And so you can go to their website, HAVOCA.org, HAVOCA.org. Just go to their Information for Survivors tab, and then look on the left-hand side. You'll see a section of topics, and this is grief. So that's where I'm reading from. And I've got the chat room open if anybody wants to sit in there. I usually don't take a look at the chat room too much because I'm busy looking at the material, but anybody's welcome to sit in there if you want to. And we'll get right into this. Hopefully I'm streaming properly and everything's cool here this morning. I haven't done a show since December, the 1st of December, so it's been like a whole month. Okay, we'll get right into this here. This is grief. As always, people, particularly psychologists, can categorize everything that happens to us in our lives. For example, it has been suggested that there are 4 phases of response to being violated. The first reaction is disbelief and shock, in some cases where adults have only just realized they were abused as children. This initial phase can be delayed. So they said this is then followed by a frozen fright, a sort of detached pseudo-calm during which the victim is compliant and appeasing. It is this appearance of cooperation that will be confused with consent when the victim looks back on the experience. The third phase is a delayed but chronic traumatic depression combined with bouts of apathy, anger, resignation, resentment, constipated rage, insomnia, and repeated replaying of events. The final phase is characterized by resolving the traumatic experience and integrating it into the victimized person's behavior and lifestyle. So this is quite interesting. So 4 stages. First one just being disbelief and shock. And as children being abused, traumatized in any way, they're kind of mainly focusing on CSA, child sexual abuse, but this can be any type of abuse in any way. As children, it's very disturbing because it's generally somebody the child knows. So whether it's a family member or somebody, a friend of the family, or even in any type of abuse, it's normally where are the children? Wherever the children are, that's where the abuse is taking place. So trying to wrap our heads around this as children is really, really difficult. And then later on as adults, trying to make sense of it is really even more difficult so many years later. Because we were children when it happened. That's the problem. It's very, very damaging. So the first reaction, disbelief and shock. Lots of people don't realize that they were abused as children until much later, and that's kind of common actually. For me, I knew. I never did have a problem with that because my parents were both brought up on child abuse charges, and there were so many siblings involved that were abused before me. I was the last born, so. We just grew up in this house of abuse. We all knew it. I didn't just push it away and then have to deal with it later. The only thing I did that situation in was the CSA, child sexual abuse, and that's just because I was being abused physically, emotionally, verbally, psychologically, in every way by my parents while the CSA, child sexual abuse was going on. So I pushed that down because I couldn't deal with that. I was already being abused and I just couldn't handle that, so I didn't deal with any of that until after the age of 42. So that's, it can happen though, where people just remember all of a sudden. They don't know why they're having so much trouble, and then all of a sudden they start to remember these things later in life. It's very difficult. I've done the studies, and they said that's very common actually for survivors of abuse, especially if the abuse happened when they were really, really young, like under the age of 3. Or under the age of 2, very difficult to get a hold of those memories. But they usually pop up at some point, which is really horrible. It's very disturbing because then you've got to deal with it. It's like, and trying to get family members to help. When people are growing up in an abusive, dysfunctional environment, usually there is no help, with the family sort of thing. So it's very tough. At that point, I just tell people, get help. Don't struggle on your own. It's a terrible thing. And then after that, followed by a frozen fright. Well, I guess they're talking about frozen fright. I mean, that's that's during, I guess, really, the abuse. A sort of detached pseudo calm during which the victim is compliant and appeasing. And then they put in parentheses, it is the appearance of cooperation that will be confused with consent when the victim looks back on the experience. They're talking mainly about CSA, child sexual abuse. And but even frozen fright, that's the fight or flight state. And your body just, when experiencing trauma, your body, all the adrenaline runs and rushes towards your vital organs. So to protect your heart, your lungs, your kidney, your liver, all your vital organs. So you either have to make a decision to run or to stay put, fight or flight. And that's a horrible situation to be in. I spent my whole childhood like that in my house with my abusers. And it did take a toll on my body for sure. So did the abuse. But that also didn't help. It's very much like poison, like toxin, especially if you're just in that state all the time, or at least most of the day or part of the day or most of the week or whatever for periods of time. It's very damaging. A sort of detached pseudo-calm. And then the third phase is a delayed but chronic traumatic depression combined with bouts of apathy, anger, resignation, resentment, constipated rage, insomnia, repeated replaying of events. This is my problem. This is where I've been, for so many years until I started my healing journey, really, and even through it. So it's, going through the healing journey, I'm still dealing with a lot of this stuff. This is, whether it's PTSD or not, this is stuff that survivors of abuse can go through. And it's horrific, bouts of apathy, anger, being resigned to the whole thing, just resignation, that's a lot of my family members were just resigned, It's like, oh, well, this is the way life is, it's just, or this was our life, this is how it was, so, it's just resigned to it. So I guess we just deal with it, be okay with it, sort of thing. Resentment, that's me, big time with the abuse. I'm very resentful against my parents, both of them, and as well as my sibling who sexually abused me. And I'm also really resentful against my other siblings who didn't really do much to step in to help me out. They were being abused too, but I still hold that resentment because I was the baby in the family. I was the youngest. And I just can't believe that and even today, they still don't acknowledge what I went through or don't acknowledge anything that I've gone through and don't have any respect for me because they were abused. So what are you going to do? You grow up in an abusive situation, you're just going to be warped yourself. So I can't, I shouldn't really expect much from them, but I still hold resentment against them a little bit. I'm sure there's some there. I used to be really resentful and hateful and a lot of anger and rage towards my abusers. Part of that I've been working on by going inside and doing that work that I talked about on the last show. You can go back and listen to it if you want to. But it's the inner child healing work that I did with Your Envisioned Mind, which used to be called Forget Talking Therapy out of Australia. Beverly Searle. That program, Your Envisioned Mind, really helped me out. And I made a lot of progress, especially dealing with the rage. So there's, some things, they may work for other people, may not work for me. Some things work for me, may not work for somebody else. But I would say just get help with these things, right? And then insomnia, which I have problems with, and repeated replaying of events. That's a huge problem for me. So I'm still working on stuff, I've got work to do. They said the final phase is characterized by resolving the traumatic experience and integrating it into the victimized person's behavior and lifestyle. So that's what I'm working on, but it's tricky. It's, because I'm not in denial. So, and I'm also not happy about the abuse or the trauma that I was put through as a child. So it's hard to resolve it, right? That's the resolving. Because if I accept it, that means that I'm okay with it. In my mind, accepting means being okay with the sort of whatever. And I'm not okay with the abuse. I'm not okay with the abuse, any of the abuse in my home. I'm not okay with the abuse my dad inflicted upon my mother. I'm not okay with the abuse with the abuse that my mother inflicted on me. I'm not okay about any of it. My siblings had paid dearly for the dysfunction and abuse in our home. Two of my brothers basically killed themselves. One really killed himself, suicide by hanging. Excuse me. Another one died of a drug overdose in a shelter. And I give that straight blame goes to my parents on all of that. And sure, they were adults when they made those decisions, but I knew where they came from. I grew up in the same house, right, with the same parents, with the same abuse, so it was absolutely horrific. And I've got a lot of work to do. So this last phase, I think, will be, it's one of the last ones here that they have on their website besides personal boundaries, which we'll do next. But this grief section is really helpful for people just to get an idea of what it is and whether or not you really need to work on it or not. For me, I do know that I do need to work. I need to do grief work. It's probably the biggest work that I need to do. I can't do it properly. Many reasons why. One of the main reasons being is that my terminally ill husband is terminally ill. So my priorities really are to make sure that he's as comfortable as possible, that he's getting the care that he needs. And I only have so many days left with him, weeks, months, whatever, years. There's only so much time left because he's very sick. So I'll put this off, this grief work, until another time. If it ever gets done, it doesn't. It does. If it never gets done, it never does. I can't do the proper grief work with him because it'll upset him, because he sees me in a state of grief and he's upset, which will then make him sicker because he's terminally ill, right? And so this stuff has to stay where it is. But maybe that's not a bad thing, stability. So I'm happy to be in a stable point in my life where things are feeling good and I feel pretty good about most things, and I'm handling things quite well, dealing with stuff. If I do the grief work, it'll probably throw me off a bit because it's such a harsh situation to have to go through. To do the grief work, So we'll pick this article back up. I'll just read this one section here before we do move on. They said, before this fourth phase can occur, which is that fourth phase is the final phase they're talking about, which is resolving the traumatic experience and integrating it into the victimized person's behavior and lifestyle so that we can be free from grief, right? So they're saying before this fourth phase can occur, a grief process must take place. So grief, I hear you cry, isn't that when somebody dies? Well, that's all in quotes there. Well, actually, whenever something is taken away from somebody, he or she will experience a grief response. In the case of victims of child abuse, you've probably lost your innocence, your childhood, the ability to trust, etc. Everyone grieves in their own way, but they all tend to follow a pattern. And this pattern is known as the 5 stages of grief. So that's where we'll pick up. You can check this out yourself. We'll pick this up back on Friday to the next section here, where they're talking about the actual 5 stages. So this is helpful for me. I'll be interested to go through this and see what they have to say about it. And so, yeah, we'll pick this back up on Friday. So, positive reinforcement. What are we doing right in our daily walk? Looking at positives and progress instead of negative thoughts. Excuse me, I just woke up just a few minutes ago, so I'm trying to stay awake here. Positive reinforcement. What are we doing right in our daily walk? Yeah, what are we doing right? Well, I would say just by getting up this morning and, deciding that we're going to keep working on our healing journey, that's something I could say, well, I got up this morning, I'm going to keep working on my healing journey. I'm taking care of things that need to get done. I'm working on taking care of myself, physically, emotionally, psychologically, and all my needs, then that's progress, That's definitely a positive. So whatever we're doing, we can't be too hard on ourselves because it's too easy to get too down on ourselves. So I try to remember the positive stuff. That's why I do that. And I try to start my day out like that. Because by the end of the day, so many things will have happened and, I might not be feeling so positive. But start the day out positive and hope it goes well. But at least I can be positive about some things that I'm doing towards healing and wholeness. And I think that's important. So we got to look at the small things. It's the little things, And I really haven't done much towards my physical care or anything like that, but I'm doing pretty good on other stuff, so that's helpful. So I want to look at self-esteem affirmations from Havoka. These are really good. These kind of help you think about what kind of person you are, who you are, and what's important to you. You know what I mean? I think this is really important. So they said here, the next one we'll look at is, I am respected and well-liked by all people that I know. This is something like an affirmation we could say all day if we're having trouble with self-esteem. I'm respected and well-liked by all people that I know. Now, whether I believe that or not is another thing. Whether I agree with it's another thing. I could say it all day, but does it really mean anything? I am respected and well-liked by all people that I know. Actually, I don't really care about stuff like that. For me, this is not an issue. I don't have a problem with this kind of stuff because I don't live my life according to what other people think of me, because I already know what a lot of people think of me because I went public with my story. So a lot of friends, the family, the friends that I used to have in the old days, some friends are sticking on my side, which is awesome, man. They're totally on my side because they know where I've been. They know where I came from. And then some are kind of like, wow, I can't believe you would rat out, grandma and grandpa like that, or whatever, or that you would go public with your stuff. And some people aren't happy with it. My immediate family, talk to them at all. People that I know personally, I think, they don't probably know what to make of me. I'm 52, no children, look to be somewhat responsible, but yet kind of not grown up yet. And that's just because I'm sure it has a lot to do with the abuse that I suffered as a child. I really didn't progress like I should have, you know what I mean, as far as maturing and maturity level. No children because I was made CSA by child sexual abuse. I'm barren, and I didn't try to do foster care or anything like that. I never could get myself stable enough to do that. Have spent the last 17 years just trying to keep my husband alive. Really, it's not me doing it; it's God. But just trying to be here to help him out, because he's been sick for 17 years, which is a crazy long time. And that's why it's just a miracle he's still here today. But, people kind of probably wonder what's up with, am I irresponsible? Is this why, my life is the way that it is or whatever. I really don't care what people think. Right? I don't live my life according to what other people think of me. Actually, I really don't care. If they like me, they do. If they don't, they don't. I've always been kind of like that because I've never really been well liked by a lot of people. I've only ever had some really, a few good friends in my life when I was growing up, which was great. I didn't really care if everybody liked me around the neighborhood or if all the kids in my class liked me. I never had an issue with that because I knew that some of them didn't. Because one time when I was in 7th grade, this one girl actually wrote a paper and turned it in to the teacher as her homework assignment and how much she hated me. And I was like, I don't know what I did to that girl, but whatever it was, she was obviously not happy with me. I wasn't well liked at home. I didn't expect that I was going to be well liked by other people. I still had to hold my head up and leave the house every day to go to school and be, have some sort of sense that I actually still belong on the planet, which was really difficult. Growing up in abuse like that and then having to go to school, kind of trains you later in life. Well, you get up and you pick up, you dust yourself off and you go, regardless of what people think of you. Right. It's a real, there might be some strength there because of that, maybe because of the situation I grew up in. But I don't really care what people think about me. So I'm respected and well liked by all people that I know. I actually know that that's not true at all. Nor will it ever be true for anybody because there's always going to be somebody that doesn't like us and somebody who doesn't respect us. And I can't gain that respect from people that I needed it from, which was my abusers and as well as my siblings who are still living today, have no respect for anybody, including themselves or anybody else. So why would I expect them to have any respect for me? It's not going to happen. They don't even respect other people, so why would they respect me? So they're just disrespectful people. They were abused. My siblings were abused just like me, so they're screwed in the head. So yeah, I don't find that most people will respect or like me. If somebody does, that's great, but I don't live my life based on that, so I don't have a problem with that one. I'm respected and well liked by all people that I know, because that would be a lie to me. I already know that a lot of people don't like me, so I can't. But for some people, if you're having trouble and struggling there, what the issue is you have to respect yourself. And you have to respect, I want respect, so I have to respect other people. And I do, I respect myself. I hold my head up, and I walk tall because I'm like, this abuse that I was put through and the choices that I made later in life and the personality that I have right now wasn't my fault, And I'm actually a good person, and you treat me good, I'll treat you good. It's like respect me, I'll respect you first. You respect me, that's great. If you don't, I'll cut you off because I don't allow abusive people in my life anymore. So I don't have a whole lot of people in my circle because I just don't. I just don't. I don't have time for garbage. My husband's terminally ill. I have no time for garbage. So people find me to be a little harsh. But I'm like, no, I've had enough abuse. I'm not taking it anymore. And even from people that are supposed to be my friends or supposed to be my support, you can't be supportive and friend and a good person in my life. You're out. So being well liked by all people, I already know that's not the case. Not all people are like me or going to. Just like me, I don't like all people. I don't like mean people, and I don't like rude people. I have a real problem with people like that. So I don't like all people. So it's kind of, it does show you that you need to like yourself. So the reason I like to do these things is because, so we could say I'm respected and well liked by all people that I know. Basically what I would say is I respect myself, and I have to like myself. At the end of the day, I have to be comfortable with myself, and that's why these little quotes here are important, to get in touch with how you feel about yourself, right? Very important. So we'll move on. We have about 1 minute left, so thanks for joining me here. I appreciate it. Let's do a Brainy quote. Brainy quote. How about this one? They say you can use them as long as you say where you got them. This is the greatest day in your life and mine is when we take total responsibility for our attitudes. That's the day we truly grow up. John C. Maxwell. That's awesome. The greatest day in our life and mine is when we take total responsibility for our attitudes. That's the day we truly grow up. Have a great week, everybody. I should be back on Friday, and you take care of yourselves. Talk to you soon.
changes all around me.
Change it, rearrange it,
make it work.
faster,
harder, smarter. Change nothing and nothing changes.
I expect change.
Give change. Make change. Spare change.
Can change the world. I face it.
Chase it. Embrace it.
Pulling that rug out for me
It only makes me a better jumper.
Got no time for your dotted line.
The bottom line?
Only I alone
Can change.
But I am not alone.
Because ATB listens. See how at atblistens.com.